Okay, David.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say it's lovely to share in the space. Ross, I smile so much in your presence. So this is a real honor. And to Lise and Liz, everyone who made this weekend of wonderful events possible, thank you very much. I'm going to read two poems. The first is from the opening year of the Writing the Land project. It is about a place that was preserved by the Northeast Wilderness Trust called Alder Stream, which is located up in the state of Maine. There are some italicized lines in this poem from the writers Laureate Savoy and Masanobu Fukuoka, who actually is a writer Ross had me read in MFA, and a sort of adapted line from the late Adam Zagajewski. Alder Stream. The colors are turning here in the most heavily logged state of the nation's history. Stretches of I-95 go without trees. I look at the road atlas and see highways that network northward, snake-like boughs and branches, paper birch, gray birch, black birch. In the distance, big mountains loom where the AT nears the end of its 2,000-mile pilgrimage here in the Maine woods, Abenaki ancestral lands, American beech, balsam fir, white cedar. How and why do we know what we know? Some say this land contains the largest grove of wild reproducing chestnuts, sits at the farthest northern reaches of chestnut habitat here at the ecotone. How light can I make myself? Stepping through leaves, spiked burrs rest just underfoot, some dried and brown, some open, some still green, encasing delicate seed. These trees are smaller and more sick than I imagined. Blight of the American chestnut in the last 100 years includes the loss of more than 3 billion trees, infected by a pathogen that colonizes a wound in the bark, red oak, white pine, tamarack. The grove of chestnut sits atop a slight ridge just over the Paquanic River. Contraptions of netting here and there to catch falling debris, part of a study. How this land too, some think, proves the farthest reaches of the blight. Penobscot River, Paquanic River, Alder Stream. Alder of the genus Alnus, flowering plant of the birch. Speckled alder, red maple, striped maple. Some researchers claim the only way to restore chestnut populations, genetically engineered species. A single step away from the source can only lead astray. Up close and without vista, the woods look imperfect. Broken branches, fallen and rotting trees, half-open burrs, and fresh scat pressed and smeared on a rock. How I am drawn to the fields of seeding milkweed, their pods opening to soft, silky, star-like filaments, the coma lifting into wind. Oh, teach me to love the mutilated world. Scientists say it is not uncommon in evolutionary history for a species to give another species a gene. When a genetically engineered father tree is planted near a wild mother, half the chestnut yield will carry a blight-tolerant trait. At what point will the wild chestnut be gone? Quaking aspen, American elm, black ash. So it is told that a squirrel once could travel Georgia to Maine on only the branches of chestnut trees. Castanea dentata, American chestnut. My steps bushwhacking here are delicate, for these chestnut trees are not big. Leaves now quite familiar, elongated, serrated, still very green. I see them everywhere, scattered about the dense forest, illumined in pockets of sunlight. What if I did not know to maneuver the burrs? What living creatures does each step press into the earth? How obvious this love for birds, someone once said, they need no trails. To be featherlight and adrift to thermals, I could love the mutilated world. The chestnut contains over 30,000 genes of DNA. Researchers want to give it one peacekeeping enzyme that protects the tree from a harmful acid. I look on Alder Stream and its beaver dams and wonder which trees are mountain alder, which are speckled. These woods speak a language of water and light, and I yearn to translate what's lost. Where to praise means to save, and to preserve keeps trees from dying. Still, I know so little of life's reckonings. The memory of what we found shapes me still. Black spruce, eastern hemlock, American chestnut. That poem was written for Northeast Wilderness Trust and all the good work they do. I'm going to read one more poem from a new project I'm working on. It's a long lyric poem on Mount Monadnock in southern New Hampshire. And you can find some more information about this project at my website, davidcruzpoetry.com. And I guess I should probably say just a little bit about, I chose this one fragment because it seems to address what I've been perhaps working on for a good majority of my writing life, which is I write about places and I write about living creatures, and all this stuff has names. And, you know, as you think about what we name things, and there's probably something important, obviously, to give something a name, but, you know, when you're trying to write about it, you end up, I mean, personally, I end up going down this rabbit hole of language and consciousness and history, and some of it's really difficult. And, you know, sometimes I'm writing about stuff that I don't expect. And so that's sort of what this fragment that I chose today is about. And really, I think the entire Monadnock project is really honing in on this. So here's a fragment that comes sort of later in the poem from Monadnock. It was the death of a man, Captain Lovewell, and a band of scalp hunters that reportedly sent Captain Samuel Willard of Lancaster, Massachusetts, north with a scout party in July 1725, seeking Indian enemy near Monadnock, recording the first summit of the mountain on the 31st of that month. And though he was reaching old age, Pennacook Chief Sachem Passaconaway, child of the bear, wielded great power still, having amassed a coalition of tribes in defense of ancestral homeland. A man, it has been said, mighty in war, wise in time of peace, grand in stature, who, as the story goes, once shot a deer with bow and arrow while underwater, who was feared even by the fierce Mohawk of the Adirondack, beyond falling sun at Long River. And when he died and his spirit flew, as is said, to the highest mountains in the region, his son, Wanalancet, brother to Congomongus, married to Maniola, daughter of Chief Chikora, would become Sachem at a time of great change and uncertainty for his people. And when I climb mountains with names like these, what does that say? And what should I read? Thank you very much for listening. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this lovely event.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate your being here. Our next reader is Sylvia Carmen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Liz and just everyone who has made and brought this festival to life today. It's been deeply inspiring, and I'm really grateful to be sharing a space with all of this delight and joy. So thank you, Ross Gay and David Cruz. And I am also really honored to be reading with such fine poets. So my first poem I wrote a couple years ago after hiking a mountain in the northern Adirondacks. And a mile before you reach the summit, you have to walk along an open ridge, and you can see, the full J range and the Sentinel range and a lot of the other high peaks in the region. And you can also just notice, because they're all exposed, the subalpine and alpine plants and trees, those stunted and tenacious shrubs and trees, the crumholts, that you tend to see right around 4,000 and then above 4,000 feet in elevation. And it just led me to think about how tough and how astonishing the journey can be. So, herself as northern wilderness, her body speaks ramble, granite and boreal Hadaranda, formed of faults, tectonic shove, and glacial buff. Burnish born, hush there, moss beds her crumholt's limbs. She breathes heath, rare as rose bay, and brave as faith, yet hips and strides, weather wetted keen, and stays the snag and gust and steep, abides in ramble. Her eschered boundaries shore up igneous erratics. She holds harsh tender, and whispers ridges, efts wink back. Through spruce roots warp and weft, she sings silver for mystery ramble. She brooks and bogs the unmapped land. All right, so the next poem I wrote in response to a piece that I had seen, a carving of a polar bear out of birch. Axis Mundi, ghosts of this earth glide through our veins and line our spines. Even the Precambrian moats of air and water return us to the ancient worlds we are. Even the red fox, who feigns he doesn't see me watching from the ridge, lifts his leg at a fallen birch as geese honk north again too soon. Winters soften more each year, like the slacking drag of a wind-up toy. Even the distant Arctic seal, lazy under a stronger winter sun, when his skin twitches danger, he slips from the dwindle of sea ice, a shadow late, before his center shrieks incarnadine, and even iron, salt, and sea douse the rage of the polar bear with her cub and hunger haunches. So she fills two bellies with 100,000 calories of maritime fat and flesh to risk another hunt from the lacy ice, while even our great sun spills herself into the Arctic seas, where the Earth's crown chakra opens vulnerable to a galaxy that pulls at our magnetic core. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's the hiss of time plunging into the waters, moving through us, and it's all so big. All right, so this third poem explores a subject that I return to often, that I really love, just the connection between human and non-human. And it's also a response to a Jack Gilbert poem that I love, Horses at Midnight Without a Moon. And it explores the relationship between us humans and other earthlings. Horses share the night with us, after Jack Gilbert. It's a wonder the mystery hasn't worn us down. Strays since the dawn of our dream, we take on the angel and limp away. Somehow survive what we love and ruin. But hear that hum? First strains of sound, doubt, then curiosity, then full-throated hope. We're no pinched clay pieces left out under a hollow sky, not by any maker of horses. Oh, the horses. They approach us across the moonless field. The ground murmurs under their hooves, and their herd heat ripples out and out. What hums between us and them breaks the skin of our dream, lets us take the air together. All right, so the last poem I'm going to read, it actually happened. This reflects an experience that I had a few years ago, and sort of just explores a little bit how wilderness can be a balm for just mood, and also sometimes what mood might offer us, what gifts it might bring. Minks. Barely dawn, I bring my sleepless weight to the lake, but not even the tannic fresh of balsam can toss it from me. Then a few feet away, a snout pokes out from a pocket of roots. She pulls free, with 3 more trailing in a velvet line. They funnel into the sheep laurel, drowsy, with blossoms that barely tremble. From the slip of their skins, sable so radiant, deep as mercy. And as if that were not enough, seeing 4 at once, the last and smallest and most curious stops, all still paws and twitching tail, to get his fill of me, until a chittering calls him to dive into the laurel, a gasp of musk in his wake. I knew when you returned, shadow mood. You arrived weeks ago and unpacked with creeping deliberation your dark luggage, thought by sinking thought, while I minced about on socked toes in demanding silence. But now I see yours is thankless work, delivering what's needed, me for one, to the gaze of creature kin, where I might throw off this dense, dull mat of distance between me and splendor. Thank you very much for this amazing opportunity.
Thanks for being here, Sylvia. Our next reader is Suzanne Rancourt.
Okay. Thank you. In our work as artists and writers, I believe we have a responsibility to give voice to those or that which cannot do so for themselves for whatever reason. I am a survivor of violent crimes, rape, domestic violence, I have family members and friends whose murders have never received justice. I have degrees, education, and I've worked in numerous fields. I was born and raised in the mountains of west central Maine and now reside in the Adirondack Mountains. I am a military veteran, and I work with survivors of trauma, PTSD, MST, TBIs, drawing from my indigeneity, how I was raised, and my formal education. I've noticed the over-pastoralization of indigenous peoples and way of life. Truth is, I've never known any nation or tribe on this entire planet that hasn't designated a small group or society the responsibility to bring justice. I've learned that positive psychology works great to insulate the therapist from uncomfortable conversations and unpleasant truths, but step one in healing is to validate that a crime was committed. Justice has not or will never be served. And when it comes to violating women and children, this breaks laws far greater than one can imagine. Thus, we all must examine closely the therapeutic paradigm from which our healing methodologies are drawn from. Those too must be decolonized. Prejudice is non-discriminatory. As a trauma survivor, sometimes I feel things that others may not. Sometimes the things I write about may cause discomfort in others and require courage to read, as are some of the following pieces, where I use adult language and speak of violent crimes. To give voice to those who've not had their say, to validate them, to be heard is a type of justice. And so I invite you to place a hand on your heart, or your solar plexus, or both. I invite you to exhale slowly. Let your breath drop into the depths of your body, down through your legs, through your feet, into our mother, the earth. The many ways to drown. This first responder will carry you forever. The air bubbles gasping from Dog Day's river muck will make him vomit for years to come. He will never again split the breast of a Christmas or Thanksgiving turkey without feeling your green 8-year-old ribs crack from adrenaline-fired chest compressions. He will never allow his own children near the river or lake or pool again, and they will rebel, scream adolescent hate at him, hurl dejection glaringly, stand lily white on the outer side of the chain-link fence. Their friends, parents, and schoolmates flutterkick and bob between lifeguard whistles, their arms floundering. He will not be able to save his own children from misconception, fallacies, fake news, propaganda, or risk-driven misunderstandings communicated by his own grief and what-ifs. What if they searched there first? What if someone had noticed the boy's absence sooner? What if, tell me, what if the loss of all children was mourned equally? What if this river's death did not pull him back into the humidity that gags him still as lifeless children, in a man's arms, a father's arms? How do we protect from this? Keep safe, keep clean. How can a man wash clean from this kind of self-inflicted failure when his arms still carry the weighted truth? He did everything he could and still it was not enough. For all the missing and murdered Indian girls and/or women who just weren't white enough or rich enough or educated enough or cared about enough. What I mean to say is, shut the fuck up. The voices of children murdered by sadistic, pedophilic men, bigots, bigotesses are speaking. The voices of women murdered by sexual predators are speaking. The voices of families sucked hollow as brittle chicken bones from the day after day, year after year of not knowing are the river voices that wail through wagging salmon tongues. This violation filth that log jams, chokes the cervical channels. So yeah, you shut the fuck up with your male dick breath arrogance. Your intellect isn't even clever, nor is your cyanide skin with the drumheads lost to the moans just before a life takes its last piss. Shut the fuck up, dude, while I tell you about finding rotting flesh that was once a girl in the sawdust pile one September during Fair Week, and how a couple of privileged white males walked away to careers all the local folks knew they hid behind because poor girls ain't worth your left testicle. Yeah. Shut the fuck up. And don't talk to me about how it's not about race. That there's simply good people and bad people, and race has nothing to do with why poor girls with head lice and dark skin find their way on the end of your cock, speared sucker at midnight, in rural Americana man camps, or Thailand, or Korea, or Mongolia, or any other country your privilege leaks between shale layers fracking. Your dick splits these girls apart from their dignity. That's how genocide works. And what's a few more scattered carcasses strewn across your petro-politico landscape? Screed histrionics, now a COVID-contaminated blanket. Armistice. I am a leaf in a flock of leaves that flutter to the earth with soft patter. Through gray branches, skinny with late summer growth and early autumn cover, an insulation of wings laid upon sweet grasses and worms. In a decision of wind, I take flight. In a gust of freedom, direction.
Thank you, Suzanne. Our next reader is Jessie Levasco.
Hello, everyone. It's a privilege to be here and be part of this poetry festival. I want to thank Nature, Culture, and Writing the Land, especially Lisa McLaughlin and Liz, for all the work you've done. I reside in two places, both in occupied land of Ojibwe in Anishinaabe in Michigan and occupied land of Abenaki in Vermont. So these poems are both 8 poems I'm going to be reading, and all of them come from my interactions, my observations from the life I live in both places. So I'm going to start with my first book, Imprinting Waves by Red Wolf Edition. And I'm going to start out with a simple poem called Words. Words stumble out of my mouth, though cathedrals of forests stand behind my eyes. My vocabulary, a barren trail in the vast wilderness of speech. Who am I to call myself a poet when metaphors have a mind of their own? I am still a seed, a small acorn, trying to describe an oak. And this poem is in honor of the season of winter. Snow ghosts. Snow ghosts rise up from the open hillside, dragging their wispy feet into swirls of open air, slithering like serpents across the icy road, closer and closer, whirling into clouds of insistence. They come racing toward the window as if swept by a giant broom, penetrate cracks and slits of the door, enter window jambs, and now this house is haunted. And just recently, through the whole pandemic, like many authors that were published, I published a book with Homebound Publications called Native, and was never really able to read. I had 10 readings scheduled that I was never able to do. So this is quite an amazing opportunity to be able to share some of the poems. So I'm also an herbalist, and one of the things I feel very strongly is that we need to remember that Indigenous people of all lands are the ones who really discovered the use of plants and medicines and how we may use them today. And so this is all about the Indigenous ones. Keepers of medicine. Across mountains and plains with buffalo, prairie dog, snake, I must search for keepers of medicine. Ask to use what they unearthed from blessed soil. Their labor with mud-crusted hands cannot be measured. We have reaped the value of what they revealed in yellow dock, dandelion, and yarrow, the great medicines that heal. Risking death as they spoke to rain and thunder, sang praises to sun, flared in rash, burned and coughed up blood in order to understand. They gathered knowledge from each landscape and leaf, knowing when to use a flower, when to use a root, which ones were asking to be chosen, chopped, boiled, swallowed in a brew. Years of trials, the great task of listening through hunger, drought, and birthing children. They grew trust in the roots of autumn, spring blossoms, birds that move seeds through air. I'm the oldest of 10 children, and during my younger years, I still had the need and want to write, and I would find a way to get away from everyone to write. And this poem is called Horse. Silence was wilderness in a house of many children. I ran like a wild horse with the sound of ocean waves crashing against the shore. I locked my bedroom door and sat in my closet writing. Pen and paper, my bow and arrow, I was inspired by the only landscape I knew, the open page. Found myself bareback, exuberant, galloping over the inner worlds of thought, shaping them into words on paper, gathering them into a corral of poems. This next poem is about curiosity and imagination when it comes to nature. Questions about a rock. This rock is part of a wall surrounding a stone tower. Shall I sit on it, scrape the flowering carpet, or bend down close? See how many small forests it has fostered in this miniature world. Perhaps they are stars, and this rocket is a planet. Shall I look for the moon? How many ways does creation tell its story? How many things die before they are known? And the next three poems are newer poems. One was just published by Literary North. It's called Nothing is Lost. And my father died about 2 years ago. And since then, some of my poetry is really exploring some of my beliefs or imaginings about what it might be like. Nothing is lost. No fragment of life dies without leaving an imprint. All fragile and mighty things speak a language scripted on stones, carved in trees and wandering in a cyclical memory of clouds. Those who die do pirouettes to get our attention, invisible as they may be, just waiting for us to recall their existence as they wait behind the veil. They exist like milkweed in a field of blowing grass, and once turned to seed, float through air like dancers on waves of wind, with moonlight beaming through them as an ancestry of stars. This poem, I purchased land this last summer, and there's a lot of trees on the land. And so I'm that much more aware of what's going on with climate change and the trees that I might have to really watch because of threats of different things affecting them. Threatened. Do you see the witch's broom tied up and twisted on trees like confusion? As a question lingers in the forest like a spell. We grow, but will we live? Ash tree threatened by emerald green ash borer, hemlock by the woolly adelgid. I hunger for beauty. It settles my racing heart and pulsing blood. Goldenrod, purple aster, sumac, please do not dissolve into the abyss. How sacred the landscape of the earth, rocky crags, roots and branches, birds and seeds. Ancestors, it is your wisdom that we call upon. Call us towards you, apple tree. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoy all the other poets, and I thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Jessie. Our next poet is Margaret Sarica.
Hello. Thanks, Lise and Liz, for including me in this festival. I often write about nature, my responsibility and relationship to the earth and to the animal, plant, and human life that lives here. My land trust will be in Springfield Woods in Baltimore, and I really look forward to being there and listening to what the woods will tell me. In the meantime, I live in Montclair, New Jersey, and make my land acknowledgement to the Lenni Lenape people and their ancestors. And I would like to also acknowledge the Ukrainian people in this terrible time. Skiing Above the Timberline was the first poem I ever published as a young adult, shortly after my father unexpectedly died. It took place in the Colorado Rockies. I began to learn how to pay attention. I stand atop a mountain. Below Clear Lake water pools into an icy surface. No trees, just quiet. A white fox softly crosses my path, leaving no imprints, stopping midway. Its green eyes settle and look directly at me. Then, without warning, the fox disappears into the snow. Today, I wish I could blend with the earth on this mountain full of snow, where the blueness of the sky adds color to the white. There is no imperfection here. When I began teaching online mid-March 2020 with no advance notice, I'd sit on my back porch and I tried to write lessons for my middle school math students. More than once, I would look out the window, mesmerized by the people and nature there, even though it seemed as if the world shrank. Looking at a spruce on a late spring morning. In the neighbor's yard, needles from a spruce prick the sky. Not taller than the pink and white house it stands behind. A large shady maple selfishly spreads its branches. A white viburnum shelters a spirea that cannot feel the warmth. The weepy cypress keeps pace with the spruce. Is it difficult to survive separated from others? My neighbor appears on her deck. She doesn't think we can see her, but the artificial blue robe disturbs the natural colors surrounding her. She stares at the sprightly spruce, then turns away to give her attention to her husband in his yellow and white work tee, drinking steaming mugs of coffee. But the decades-old spruce is set apart, quiet, alone, dressed up, waiting. These next two poems are also centered on the pandemic. After the parks reopened, we ventured into one. It was a cold hike, a sad trail, but along the way, we found a touch of red and 3 haikus. You never know what you're going to find unless you set out on the trail, right? It's called Paquanic Highlands in May. Springtime snow pellets melt on red maple saplings in ashen drab woods. Brush ensnares trekkers. Sparse woods seek companionship. Saplings shake snow dust. On a rocky trail in a fairy tale forest, soft hail pelts hikers. When we were finally able to visit my son and his partner in Cincinnati, so much was closed. With few places to go, we decided to take a walk by the Ohio River. Everything is closed, but the parks are open. Facing Kentucky across the Ohio River, we sit on a cement bench that does not give or take away. Like the soundless fountain that used to spout water, we are confused about our function in this place. Masked and maskless roam, keep 6 feet apart while we continue our path, circling a slow-moving river. In the distance, the trees rustle, shaking their leaves slightly as the wind presses them to respond. Weather. Here in my New Jersey town, rains swell, then recede. We fear gray skies day after day, torrential downpours forecast like Florida, but we don't live in Florida. With no palm trees nor ocean nearby, just frequent, continual, worrisome, rainy days. Mornings like this, I want to stay inside, read, steep pot after pot of tea, wait for sun and dry days. I wonder if plants in our garden can be found in the rainforest. I wrote this next poem to honor one single plant, rue. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by all that nature gives us, and in reference to or deference to Ross Gay, it really was delightful to write it. An ode to rue. Magical, mysterious rue, mad Ophelia's hands carry columbine, fennel, and yew. Priest, use your herb of grace to sprinkle holy water on parishioners, and it is Milton's archangel that rues the dire event. Known as plant of purity, protect me from poisons and fleas, preserve my sight, and like Michelangelo and Da Vinci who ate the trefoil leaves, inspire me. Too much of you can kill me. Your pungency can make me sick, though tiny morsels can improve my health. Ward off evil spirits, change my mood. In winter, I bundle your bright green leaves in tiny yellow clusters with twine and hang upside down in my window until you turn brown. Remove sorrow, rid my home of regret, keep safe my spirit like an innocent child running through an open green meadow. No cares, no worries, no regrets. I've got two more poems. This one is called My Next Climb. The Himalayan jumping spider preys on glacial fleas. I'll start again. The Himalayan jumping spider preys on glacial fleas and springtails. Elk and bighorn sheep are spotted high in the Rockies. Cascades mountain goat follows hikers closely in search of salt. And the brewer sparrow's persistent staccato song heard in the Canadian peaks reminds me of you. You are not alone. While life seems scarce, there can still be great abundance if you know where to look. At the timberline, even the red fire sun can be a companion. The last poem is called Faith, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. It's really been a wonderful 2 days. Faith. The trail fraught with intertwined roots, sharp stones, poisonous undergrowth reaches for those treading its path. The hooting owl, the glowing eyes of a staring raccoon, the flap of bats' wings forces me to move quickly. The night sky invisible through a dense canopy. In the dark, walking is clumsy, running treacherous, and the woods leave me, its nocturnal visitor, with trepidation. Look ahead. Instead, head down, I feel the forest floor at my feet for what hopes to be safe passage. The end of the trail looms a distance that is not perceptible, except that it is. Yet looking forward, signs of danger opens my mind to possibilities of navigating by faith, even though the bat's flight keeps the rhythms of time with the beat of their wings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margie. Our next reader is Petra Kuppers.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be part of this company. I really enjoyed the festival, and it's just lovely to listen to you all. And I led part of the workshops at the beginning of the festival, and you can see that I changed my lipstick again. So, this is for you all, making sure you'll see a good range of lipsticks here. Okay, let's read. Let's read a little bit. It's amazing to read in the stream of words that are moving here. So I come to you from Anishinaabe territory, colonially known as Ypsilanti, Michigan. And some of the poems that I'm reading to you today are influenced by this land, and others are influenced by Salt Lake Seas out in Oregon. So, and the first one I'm beginning with emerges from an amalgamation of these different lands. And I hope you enjoy this glimpse of gut botany. So this here is gut botany, and on gut botany you see the ancient sturgeon, the sturgeon that travels all the way from the shores of the sea in Germany, where I was born, to the big lakes here where I now live. So the ancient survivor dinosaur fish with the tendrils beneath his mouth, with which he senses the words that the world. It's a very powerful image to me, and something that comes up again and again in the poems as well. Gut botany. Sucker punch, the knife in the street, fear of being sheared out of the stream into the backwater, dead fish belly up by the side of the pond, pills and poisons and endings. Let go and sever the ties and ignore. The party is always elsewhere, a shadow in a canoe in a photo likely put on Facebook tomorrow. Fake of having fun behind the grass, tree, a Stephen King book where I know the next sentence already, primacy of white masculine fear, close the leaky gut, body drained of tears. Just speak, walk with me, close the loop. And I invite you now to do this with me in the poem. Bow forward, pour yourself into your capable hands and hold your heart. And release. Bow forward, pour your stomach into your feeble hands. Release the binds that bind so tightly to your spinal column. And release. Bow again. Drop your sexual organs into waiting hands. Wait. Breathe in, out, in, soothe, and release. Fish slip into the labyrinth of intestines, cruise past the atlas, feed on the carpet fibers of worry. Agile between the lung pearls, hollow behind the liver, green wall, delicate black veins spider along for companionship, dark purple, maroon. Fins soothe the red spots of tension, white bands where muscles have leached nourishment out of tight bands. Between kidney and uterus, raspy tongue licks soggy dahlias on their stalks, ovaries bloom. Glide, mucus oils the way, swim among the velvet, you and me into plump cushions, sturgeon tumbling ground. Thank you. And let's go to another poem, quite a bit later on. Like many people here, my book came out in March 2020, so I have not been able to do any readings in person, and to see people in front of me bowing and dropping into themselves. So it's lovely to see the traces and to see what we've been able to do on Zoom. All right, here's the next one. It's called Hello, and it is based on something out in Oregon. In 2008, Dennis Jenkins of the University of Oregon reported that he'd found human coprolites, the precise term for ancient excrement, shit, dating 14,000 to 15,000 years old in a series of shallow caves overlooking an ancient lake bed near the town of Paisley. So this was reported in the National Geographic, and it is indeed like a very important find. It shows us very early human habitation in the area, and actually one of the first signs of human habitation in what we now call Turtle Island. So this is the poem that emerged from reading this little snippet while I was hanging out in the area of Paisley. Someone did pass here in a band, a mob, someone who never knew what it meant to be alone. In vision quest or sanctioned lead of the hand, eyes dark and senses open to the burning sun. Pause for a day, and my bones and skin miss the light touch of the glass fiber, the screen caress, your affirmation of this, of writing, of a pace that mirrors yours, my reader. Instead, the pond stretches liquid, a V-shaped wave. My headphones etch out birds with Katie Lang. The cricket remembers the taste of the copper wire. Current murmurs along the highway behind my cabin. Shift my fingertips on the keys into her body on the horizon line. Meet the baton in the electronic print. Revolt, and here it stops. Someone did pass here, walked the land into their bones, each generation passing on their way from coastal harvest without longshoremen and harbor fire to ochre caves or a lush inland sea. An ancient alligator burrows into the mud and expires. Stop of wire Wi-Fi, the netted frame of day. Rest here. Do not press the reload button. And still alone. Rest one night in a small cave, an overhang, barely protect you from the rays. Morning shit bonded with calcite, dried, salt eats into ancient seeds, skin gently cracked by digestive juice. DNA wove itself into a message rhythm, amino acids clouding one by one amid rain and acid and rain and snow. Sun-baked pearls lifts itself to the light. What becomes of the writer's cottage on the dry lake rim? Whose bodies shapeshift protest in nuclear futures? My keyboard sips the juice. The black snake in the sky hums and waits, slips into the wrinkle before the generator thrums once again. A downward stroke. Someone beats utopia out of my sister's skull. Alone. We stitch the line as best we can. Our hands raised up to the sun. My feet on the salty lines of the alkaline desert. Hello. She said, 15,000 years later. Hello, my Mars rover, my metal plate. And Eve extends her hand, as if I could decode in writing the prayer on her lips, a call for the bird, for the bison, for the skin that would guide her to the other world, of the message freed, circling amid the outer stars, meteor shot back to the forest of urban strife. The policeman's bullet from the future desert, hold her saliva drop, eyelash, smear from the growing cells of her cervix. Here you rest, sweet one. Thunderbird booms across the horizon, metal pierces, sunspots radiant warmth. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra.
Thank you.